So Star Wars Outlaws is one of the first ever open world Star Wars games, at least if you're not including stuff like the LEGO games, and because of that there is a hell of a lot of info out there about the game, as Ubisoft are definitely doing their best to market this game as much as they possibly can. Because of how much info there is so much for everyone to take in, and so today we're essentially going over 10 of the more fundamental elements of Star Wars Outlaws that you definitely need to know before I spend the next month diving deep into every single element of the game in a heap of upcoming content. So without wasting any time, let's get stuck right into it. Now, one of the more exciting elements to Star Wars Outlaws, which isn't really in line with the main elements of the game, is that this game does have full space battles. We are able to fly around in Kay's ship known as the Trailblazer, and on top of that there is seemingly ground-to-air traversal, which is something that a lot of people have been absolutely crying for in a Star Wars game for quite some time now. They've shown us exactly what it looks like to go from ground to space and then back to the ground as well on a different planet, and from what we've seen it essentially looks seamless, although it's not quite as seamless as we might think. There are obviously loading screens thrown in here. We are not necessarily in control of the Trailblazer the whole time, but from what our eyes are seeing, it does essentially look as though we are getting into the Trailblazer, flying into space, and then heading to another planet and landing on the ground without ever having an actual loading screen or anything like that. So that is something to definitely be very excited about, but also, like I said, while we are in space, there is also the ability to have full-on space battles as well. A lot of this game will be taking place in space rather than on the ground on any of the given planets, and so that is definitely something to note, that this game isn't just a third-person action adventure game. There is going to be aerial combat too, and I dare say that is going to have some key parts to play when it comes to the story, as we are obviously playing the role of a scoundrel, and when you look at someone like Han Solo, a lot of the time that we see Han, he is flying around chasing people or running away from people in a lot of cases in the Millennium Falcon. So that is something to be very excited about, that the game isn't just going to be a third-person action adventure game. Now, in terms of the setting of this game, it is set during the events of the original trilogy. It is set between episodes 5 and 6, which is something I'm very, very excited for. People have been crying out for some original trilogy Star Wars gaming content forever now. It does seem as though a lot of the content that we get when it comes to Star Wars games is set in the prequel era, and although we all love that, the original trilogy is what a lot of people fell in love with Star Wars from, so it is awesome to finally have a game that is set in that era. Now, even though it does take place between episode 5 and 6, it doesn't really have too much at all to do with the main story of the Skywalker saga. We are obviously not going to be crossing paths with a lot of the characters who we see throughout those movies, although I will be getting to a few cameos that we can expect to see later on too. But yeah, keep in mind that this game does take place a little bit more in the background of that story, where we as a scoundrel are essentially making the most of the Empire, being a little bit distracted by Luke and all of his friends during that period. Now, speaking of scoundrels, there is a full reputation system in this game that takes place between all of the different crime syndicates in the game, and we can have individual reputations with each of those crime syndicates. In Star Wars Outlaws, there is confirmed to be the Hutt Cartel, Crimson Dawn, the Pike Syndicate, the Ashiga Clan, and Zarek Besh, and between all of those different crime syndicates, we essentially get to pick and choose who we have allegiance to, or at least from the first 4 that I mentioned anyway, as the Zarek Besh are pretty much our main enemies in the game, so I'm going to assume we can't become friendly with them, since they are pretty much trying to kill us throughout the entire game. Now, how this reputation system is going to work, and again, keep in mind, I'm going to be doing full videos on a lot of topics like this, breaking it down to the finer details, but a quick summary of this is essentially that we can either have good reputations or bad reputations with each of these syndicates. So for example, if you want to become a bit more friendly with the Hutt Cartel, you can do jobs for them, and you can make sure you do the jobs properly, unlike someone like Han Solo, who obviously had a bad reputation with the Hutt Cartel. And as we sort of earn a bit of a reputation with those syndicates, they will become a little bit more friendly with us and can allow us to either get some better paying jobs. We can also get into certain areas of each planet where you can only get into them if the Hutts or the Crimson Dawn, for example, any of these syndicates, if they actually trust you a little bit more, then they will give you a little bit more freedom as well. So that is going to be a key element of the game, the entire reputation system. And like I said, expect to see a full video breaking that down in the next week or so. Now, there are also multiple different planets in this game, and again, there will be a lot of videos covering this too. But as of right now, there are 5 confirmed planets, those being Toshara, Tatooine, Akiva, Kijimi, and Canton. Cantonica, 3 of which are obviously from the movies, those being Tatooine, Kijimi, and Cantonica, 1 of which is mentioned in novels, that being Akiva, and then there is Toshara, which is essentially being made from the ground up for Star Wars Outlaws, almost similar in a way to Kobo from Jedi Survivor, where that was made entirely from scratch for the sake of the game. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are new to the channel and you are interested in more Star Wars Outlaws content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. There is plenty more stuff on the way. I've got about 16 videos planned between now and the launch of the game, covering every single detail you need to know, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, when it comes to the combat in this game, it is not going to be as simple as just point and shoot. It is confirmed that we are going to have different blaster modules, those being focused, blaster, and stun, and so there is going to be plenty of different ways to play this game, and those are just the 3 that are confirmed as of right now. There is a chance that there are plenty more blaster modules in the game as well. As an example, there might be missions where we need to go and actually immobilize an enemy, but we don't want to kill them. Maybe we need to capture them and bring them back to Jabba the Hutt, for example. And so in that case, we can set our blaster to stun, similar to what we see often throughout the Star Wars franchise. There are also going to be certain types of enemies, for example, maybe droids, who can only take damage from a certain blaster module rather than just the regular blaster module. So we are going to need to be constantly changing things up. And like I said, there may even be more blaster modules that we just aren't aware of just yet, which is definitely exciting to think about some of the awesome ways that we may be able to play the game. Now, another crucial element to Star Wars Outlaws is the wanted system, which is actually pretty similar to a game like GTA, which I'm going to assume most of you have played and know how the wanted system works in that game. Committing crimes in Imperial controlled locations can lead you to become wanted by the Empire, and there is pretty much a star system, which is again similar to GTA, where the more stars you have, the harder they are going to chase you. This means we are going to need to be a little bit stealthy in certain situations, otherwise we kind of run the risk of becoming wanted by the Empire and they are going to try and chase us down. And I don't know if it is confirmed yet or not, but there is a chance this is the case with the syndicates too. So maybe if your reputation becomes so bad with, like I said, the Hutt cartel, there is maybe a chance that Jabba might actually send bounty hunters after us too. But again, take that with a grain of salt, because I don't know if that's confirmed just yet. All we know for sure is that that can happen with the Empire. Now, speaking of Jabba the Hutt, we know that there are some key cameos from the movies that are appearing in the game, as they have essentially been all over the marketing material. Obviously, I just mentioned Jabba. We know that he runs the Hutt cartel and he is going to be a big player in this game. Like I said, there are going to be 5 crime syndicates and essentially 4 that we can actually interact with. The Zarek Besh, like I said, are essentially our enemies, so they're not quite the same as the other crime syndicates. So it does seem like Jabba the Hutt is going to be a pretty damn big player in Star Wars Outlaws. We also know Kira from Solo Star Wars Story. We know that at this point during the Star Wars timeline, she is in charge of Crimson Dawn, as we know that Maul has died by then. So Kira is confirmed to be in the game. She's not played by Emilia Clarke, unfortunately, because that would obviously cost them way too much, but she does actually look fairly similar to her if you account for her being a little bit older now than she was in the movie. The first time we ever saw Kira in the marketing, I didn't think it looked anything like her, but the most recent stuff we've seen, she does actually look pretty damn similar to Emilia Clarke. We have also seen Lando in some moments at a sabacc table, where we know that he loves to spend a lot of his time. He does seem like he's going to be a bit of a smaller cameo, so I'm not too sure if he'll be in the game all that much, but there is a chance he may have some side quests for us or something like that, so it is going to be pretty cool to see Lando throughout our journeys in Star Wars Outlaws. Now, those are really the only confirmed cameos as of right now, but there is a good chance there are plenty more cameos from the original trilogy. Obviously, I'm not 100% sure if this will happen or not, but there is a good chance that any of the bounty hunters that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, so Boba Fett, Bosk, IG-88 and stuff like that, there is the chance that some of those guys could show up in the game, because again, they are all around at this time, and being sort of involved in the underworld, which is where this game is going to be taking place, with a lot of scum and villainy, there is a good chance that a lot of characters like that could show up in the game. Now, something else massive to note is that the game is confirmed to have DLC on the way, and it does also have a season pass, which means you can essentially buy the season pass and you will then get the DLC for free later on down the line when they eventually launch. Now, also keep in mind you can buy the DLC separately, so you don't have to buy the season pass. Don't worry about that. It's going to operate pretty much the same as any other single player game when DLC launches. And the way that Avatar Frontiers of Pandora has done it, as well as a lot of other Ubisoft games, is that there will likely be 2 decently sized DLC story packs, maybe 6 and 12 months after launch, which will just add a little bit more to the story and a little bit more for us to do as well. Now, I just mentioned Avatar, and for those who don't know, Massive Entertainment, who are making Star Wars Outlaws, they also made Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which launched in December of last year. Granted, it was mostly a different team within the same studio, but both of those games are made by Massive Entertainment. Now, I played Avatar in December last year, and honestly, I've really enjoyed it. It wasn't by any means the game of the year or anything like that, but I would give that game a good 7.5 out of 10. Honestly, even like an 8 out of 10 if I was maybe a bit more of an Avatar fan. And so that game really did impress me and has me pretty damn excited for Star Wars Outlaws, considering the quality of that game. The immersion was absolutely insane. It was probably one of the most immersive single player games that I've ever played. The map design and all that sort of thing, it was just so damn good. It really did feel like you were running around on Pandora as a Na'vi character. And honestly, it had some of the best graphics of any game to date. That's even been confirmed by the likes of Digital Foundry. So it's not just my opinion that the graphics are really good. It is literally down to the stats that the graphics are some of the best that we've ever seen in any game so far, as well as the fact that that game launched very stable with little to no issues. So hopefully we can expect the same here, but that's something we're obviously going to have to wait and see. Now, finally, outside of the main path of the story, there is going to be plenty of side content for us to do. Even just simple little things like playing Sabak to earn more credits. We've seen footage of Kay actually playing like a retro arcade looking game as well. It does seem like there is going to be a whole lot of fun stuff for us to do other than just playing that main path of the story, which I think is important in any open world single player game like this. The devs have confirmed that the game is going to be about a 25 to 30 hour experience for that main path, and then about a 50 to 60 hour experience for those of us who are completionists who want to try and finish pretty much everything in the game. And that is definitely very exciting to me. The fact that we could get a good 50 hours or so out of this game, plus obviously plenty more once we get some DLC down the line. And so it does seem like there is going to be plenty of stuff to do in Star Wars Outlaws. But that is it for 10 of the most crucial elements of Star Wars Outlaws. I'm keen to hear all of your guys' thoughts on this game, whether you guys think it looks good or not. So be sure to leave your thoughts down below. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you always.